In this video, I will describe a discussion assignment that I created to help students learn how to critically read scientific literature. I originally created this assignment for Health and Rehabilitation Sciences 5900, which is titled Health Sciences Research, Interpretation, and Applications. The goal of this course is for students to understand and interpret published research so that they can apply that research to their practice in various health sciences fields. In prior semesters, this course included weekly, multiple-choice quizzes and midterms that led to a final exam with open-ended questions. According to the instructors, students often struggled with these open-ended questions on the final. Students were looking for a right or wrong answer to every question and weren't adequately prepared for open-ended questions. I developed this assignment to help move students away from thinking about scientific research in that right-wrong dichotomy. This assignment was modeled after an in-person class activity called Create. If you'd like to find out more information about the original assignment, follow the link at the bottom of the slide. The assignment I created requires students to read a scientific article selected by the instructor. They read the article one section at a time and participate in a discussion activity after reading each section. These discussion activities are spaced out throughout the semester so that they align with what students are learning in the course. The learning objectives for this assignment span a range of different levels of thinking. When completing this assignment, the successful student will be able to explain the main concepts presented in the article and how these concepts connect to one another, diagram the methods used in the study, assess whether the data supports the study's questions and hypotheses, compare their conclusions to those drawn by the authors, design a future experiment that builds on this study, and discuss each section of the study with classmates. First, students read the introduction of the paper. In the first discussion post, they are required to either look up and define unfamiliar words and key terms, summarize the main concepts, draw connections between different concepts, or make a list or drawing of the main concepts and how those concepts connect. Instructors can choose to specifically ask one of these questions or give students the option to answer the question that would be most useful to them in understanding the introduction. After submitting their initial post, students are required to respond to a certain number of classmates' posts for each part of this activity. Each part of the activity contains specific questions that students may want to consider when responding to their classmates' posts. For the first post, students are asked to provide classmates with any helpful additional information about the terms and concepts the classmate defined, ask follow-up questions to clarify their classmates' posts, or agree or disagree with the main concepts their classmates have identified. For the second part of this activity, students read the methods section of the article. They then draw a cartoon that demonstrates how the study was physically carried out. Students also write out the main questions and hypotheses presented in the paper. For part 3, students read the results section of the paper. Based on the results, students draw conclusions about the questions and hypotheses they wrote for the previous discussion post. Students are asked to think critically about what the results tell them about the topic being studied, which encourages them to draw their own conclusions about the research rather than accepting the author's conclusions at face value. After drawing their own conclusions, students read the paper's discussion. They then compare and contrast their own conclusions with those drawn by the authors. They are also asked to consider whether they have any doubts or concerns about the author's conclusions. In the final discussion post, students take the experiment one step further. Students draw, diagram, or describe a future experiment that they would conduct as a follow-up to this study. This part of the activity encourages students to think of science as an iterative process where one study continually builds on the previous. Overall, this assignment requires students to think far more deeply about the literature they are reading than does a multiple-choice quiz. Developing the skills necessary to critically analyze scientific literature will allow students to use research responsibly in whatever health science work they pursue in the future.